Welcome, City of
Recording
Canby.
in progress.
Welcome, City of Canby, to the Canby Planning Commission on Monday, March 13th. We're going to go ahead and call to order this Planning Commission meeting. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, let's see, consent items. We have draft meeting minutes from January 23rd to approve, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, who has the copy of the meeting minutes?
We don't have them here.
Okay,
You would have gotten them in your packet.
okay. Yes, please.
I'm organized, man.
Man, it's awesome. Let's roll. You want to read?
Commissioner Jurosh, do you have yours? Meeting minutes?
I do.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you like to take a moment just to look at those, or what's?
Yes.
I've already looked at them, thank you.
That was it earlier.
Okay.
These were the highlighted red changes that we were talking about with the, nope, that was in the, that's a
These are
different.
just straight up minutes.
Yeah, this is when we were talking about, Mr. Guy stopped bringing them in here and we were talking about some of the things coming up.
I did see those. Yeah, I did see those. So do we want a roll call for
Please.
approval?
Yes.
Okay, so we will do a roll call for approval of the meeting minutes drafted January 23rd as written. Commissioner Jarosh?
I approve.
Commissioner Llewellyn?
Approve.
Commissioner Ewert?
Approve.
And I approve. Okay. Next is the citizen input on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on non-agenda items. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak. Staff in the Planning Commission will make every effort to respond to the questions raised during the citizens' input before the meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. There are no non-agenda items from citizens, correct? Nothing online? Correct, okay. There is no new business, and at this point, we're going to get into the public hearings section, and we're gonna invite Planning Director Hardy to introduce the topics for us for the public hearing.
Thank you, Chair Ellison. I just wanted to briefly mention on item B, 5B, housing production strategy. That will not be a hearing for tonight, as I mentioned in my email. And I just wanted to briefly cover that will be covered as part of the housing production strategy, will be covered as part of the housing needs analysis. We received some late word from Department of Land Conservation and Development about a week ago. And they asked us to delay the housing production strategy so that we had more information on housing densities as we move forward in that may influence the housing strategies. The second piece of that is we have a grant for housing production strategies. I was under the impression that we had to have this adopted in order to get refunded for the monies for the grant. They clarified and said, no, actually it's in a format that would be allowed to be like ready for adoption, but not an adoption. It's not adopted, does not need to be adopted. It could be adoption ready and still be acceptable for the grant reimbursement. So the housing production strategy really essentially those kind of marry with the housing needs analysis. There will be more information on the housing needs analysis, and the timing of that would be over the next year, the next fiscal year, and the adoption of the housing needs analysis. We have our mandatory adoption date for that would be by June 2024. I'd like to get this back in front of the Planning Commission in February of 24, and maybe around February 19th. That's a Planning Commission hearing date. I'm not defining that tonight, but I just want to make sure that it's clear that that's going to be put in, it's going to be married with the housing needs analysis. So the housing production and housing needs analysis will be combined together. A little bit more information about that is housing production strategies almost always, if not always, are combined together. It was just some last minute conversations with, it was really the way our grant was structured and the need to confirm that we would actually get reimbursed for the funds, but it also, I think, makes some sense in that the housing densities and also looking at things like residential subdivisions, which is in our housing needs analysis, which will be, as time goes by, those subdivision lots that are platted and recorded with roads on them, if those end up having houses built on them, and if they have building permits, they will not be considered as part of our vacant inventory. If they are just platted, they will be considered as part of our inventory. So meaning that it's important that we give some time to the developments that are already in the pipeline, which will end up influencing our housing needs analysis, which also talks about housing production strategy as well, which is related to housing cost. So hopefully that's not confusing, but I just wanted to let you know that that's the reason for the delay. You did receive a full staff report. I don't imagine that would be changing much, other than we'll have new information for the housing needs analysis, which will identify where we're at with our buildable land inventory, and that would be part of that process.
So there'll be an updated staff report at that time to include the new information plus the existing information.
Exactly. It'll be kind of all in one swoop, yes.
Great.
And just as an aside, the economic opportunity analysis is not really, it's not required to be held. So we're going to go ahead and have a hearing on that on March 27th. We don't need to wait for anything on that. That will be dealing with employment lands on March 27th. That'll be our next hearing. If you have questions about this further, let me know. I'm glad to respond. It's I think that as we go forward, I'll keep you informed on where we're at with housing needs analysis and housing production strategy, and will there be changes that might occur to what the strategies are. My guess is that the strategies that have been defined already will largely remain. There's a housing need. We know what that is. It's quantifiable. But from the state's perspective, they like to make sure they're merged together. So we're dealing with the need based on what our buildable land space is.
Great.
So with that in mind, we are going to have the hearing tonight on the text amendment, and I will turn that over to Brianna.
Well, Matt has it.
Okay, you got to introduce us first. Thank you.
Okay, before we move on, Commissioner Jarosz, do you have anything you want to bring up or ask about Dawn's comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, anybody else on the committee? All right, we're good. Okay, tonight there's a matter before the hearing body that requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matters. If you wish to testify on these matters, please fill out a public testimony card and give it to the recording secretary. When your name is called, please step forward to the microphone at the front of the table, state your name, address, and interest in the matter. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In doing so, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access. All written testimony received, both for and against, shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. Staff, 5 minutes, and then questions, if any, by hearing body or staff. Chair will open the public hearing for testimony. Applicant, 20 minutes. Proponents, 3 minutes. Opponents, 3 minutes. Rebuttal, 10 minutes. Chair will close public hearing. Questions, if any, by the hearing body. And then discussion by the hearing body. A decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing on each matter, or it will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, with that, turn it over to Brianna to discuss the text amendment code update erratum TA 23-01.
Thank you very much, Chair Ellison. Good evening. My name is Brianna. I'm an associate planner with the City of Canby, and as you mentioned, we are going to discuss the text amendment 23-01. Next, please, if you could. Maybe. It was working before.
It was working just fine.
All right. Oh, you have to screen share as well, so Judy can see. Judy, we're getting it shared for you now.
Thank you.
Yeah, right there. Screen share. It's across the bottom.
I would like to point out for Commissioner Jarosh, I see an annotation of the slide number 2 of 11 is currently up. Are you so excited? I'm so excited for you.
Happy dancing, Paul.
It's a good day.
Screen share.
There we go.
Yay.
Wonderful.
Yes. Thank you so much.
All right. So this text amendment is limited in scope to a revision of a single standard found in Chapter 16.10 of the Development Code, off-street parking and loading. Next. The adoption of Ordinance 1570 in June 2022 incorporated standards for food cart pods and mobile food vendors into the Development Code. One of these standards is that in the downtown commercial C1 zone, food cart pods are not required to provide off-street parking. Next. An editing error was made in language from section 16.10.10.b of the Development Code was deleted, which affected parking standards for all uses in the C1 zone. Here is the exact language from CMC 16.10.10.b. I'm going to read it all and then I will explain sort of what happened. So the regulation reads as follows. No off-street parking shall be required for any use permitted outright within the C1 zone in the rectangular area bounded by North Ivy Street on the east, Northwest 1st Avenue on the south, North Elm Street on the west, and Northwest 3rd Avenue on the north. So what had happened was the text in blue was erroneously deleted through the food cart pod text amendment. Again, this was nothing but an error. So this text amendment here, TA 23-01, is simply to put that language back into the code as intended. This text amendment has been duly noticed as required by state law, and no public or agency comments have been submitted. And so staff would like to recommend the following motion for Planning Commission, and I will leave you to read the exact language if you do indeed agree to approve. If not, you would switch approval with denial there. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioner Jarosh, any questions from you?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Llewellyn?
I just had one. So we're just talking about the downtown. Has any of this so I kind of went through this stuff fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Have we talked about the industrial park at all?
No, this does not affect the industrial park at all.
So what happens if somebody wants to put food carts in there?
We do have parking standards specific to food cart pods for both of our industrial zones. We have M1 and M2, and I believe it's 1 space per cart.
That's what it looked like, yeah.
Yes.
So if somebody had a good reason that they didn't need the parking, could that be waived?
They could apply for a variance. Yeah, there are ways, there are avenues to do that, yes.
Commissioner Ewert? No comment at this time, okay. Shall we entertain a motion for approval?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we move to approve recommended approval of TA 23-01 to the City Council based on the findings and conclusions contained in March 3rd, 2023 staff report as presented during this hearing.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Very well. We'll take a roll call vote then to approve. So Commissioner Jarosh,
I approve.
Commissioner Llewellyn,
I approve.
Commissioner Ewert,
Approve.
and I approve. We approve the motion.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. On to items of interest from planning staff. Anything that you want to bring forward?
I just wanted to, I was talking about this earlier, but the economic opportunity analysis, that document will be before the Planning Commission on March 27th for recommendation to the council. We spoke at length at various work sessions regarding this. This will be an opportunity for a public meeting on that, and that's coming up. That's our next hearing item. We do have some other items that are actually land use development review applications. They have not landed on an exact timeline, but we may see some of those in April. And so we'll give you more information as we have that, but we don't have those nailed down. They're in various states of review before they'll get to the Planning Commission. I did want to give a little update on the comprehensive plan update process, and there has been a reach out, or there will be a reach out shortly, if might be actually as of today, for folks that are that we're inviting onto the comprehensive plan advisory committee, and so that's something up and coming. It's pretty cross representation group. And there's 20 members of that, so I'm sure you folks will be hearing about that shortly. There's members of Planning Commission as well as council that are on that, so just as an FYI. I'm not really at liberty to give the list out, but just to let you know that's coming, and that will be started. Hopefully we'll have the first kickoff meeting in March. It'll be late March or early April, and that will start that comprehensive plan process. There's also, we talked about efficiency measures of the code related to, and I know a lot of these terminology things are kind of like difficult to really understand, so just maybe a little clarification. So the housing needs analysis, maybe backing up a little bit from the previous commentary that I provided, the housing needs analysis really is about our needs and about the need for urban growth boundary expansion, specifically to residential. And so the needs analysis is going to be something that will be again looked at as we continue to absorb residential development is absorbing land within the city, and we're going to go back through and reassess the buildable lands piece of that to determine exactly how much need there is. Some of that Commissioner Ewert talked about, things like, could we do more infill for the city and do less expansion? That will obviously be part of that. And so the three things that we're looking at that would end up reducing the need for expansion that we're putting out as efficiency measures are cottage developments, and that could be both infill as well as greenfield developments. That's one of them. Plan unit development updates that in our code. And then the third one is looking at the commercial zoning on the south side of 99, kind of a mixed use concept there, which would be allowing residential above commercial in that mix. And so those three would end up providing some incentives for developers to develop more intensely within the existing urban growth boundary, reducing the possibility of reducing the need for as much of an expansion. We clearly know that there's an expansion need. I don't think we'll ever be able to do all the things and not have any need for expansion. So there's going to be a need based on our forecast. But those three items on efficiency measures will be coming back before the Planning Commission. And that very well could be, I'll be giving you updates definitely in April. We likely will have a consultant on board as well. And I'll give you more as that unfolds, but that's moving forward. So just to let you know where that's at. So that's the housing piece of this that's continuing. We do have some deadlines, and that's when I mentioned the June 2024. That deadline is Portland State University provides a population projection. It's good until June 2024. We're working within the confines of that projection. If we go beyond that, we'll have to redo the housing needs analysis, housing production strategy, and economic opportunity analysis, which we do not want to do. It will also derail the comprehensive plan process and urban growth boundary process. So there's a lot of targeting on moving all these pieces forward to make sure that doesn't happen. But there's a lot to accomplish in the comprehensive plan process. So I think clearly we probably have a full agenda for March 27th, but for sure mixed in with development review applications, you will be hearing from staff on the comprehensive plan, where we're at on that, as well as the efficiency measures for the code updates that we're talking about. And so that, just wanted to give the Planning Commission some information on that, as well as the public, community members, what's happening on that. If you guys have questions about that, I'm happy to answer those, but just trying to keep this all like clear, and the full objective here, and we've heard this from the planning commissioners, is also really trying to do a very robust outreach so that we get more input. And I know there's been commentary about why don't we get the input. We're really striving to get as much as we can. Can we do better? I think we can, but some of this is just how do we reach people, and that's a big part of it. When the newspaper runs an article and they have a link, you would think you would get tons of people that would participate, but maybe it needs to just be repeated over and over and over again. Sometimes you have to do things 3 times with people to get them to engage. So that's something that we're working on as well, is getting the word out. So if there are questions on where we're going, we also will be coming back. Ryan will be coming back on the fencing code. We don't have an exact timeline on that, but fencing's coming back. So.
You spoiled my question.
Okay.
No date certain.
No, and I'm not going to put Ryan on the spot tonight, but yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, any questions from any of the commissioners?
I had one question. I was kind of confused on it. So the needs analysis, the housing needs analysis, is that part of the comprehensive land use plan?
It's really, it fits into the comprehensive plan in a way, in the sense that the housing element or the housing chapter of the comprehensive plan, those really are very, very similar. And so what we end up doing is we move the comprehensive plan and the housing needs analysis together, showing what that need is. There's policies that are developed in the comprehensive plan, which some of those are going to be reflective of the strategies that are adopted in the housing production strategy. There'll be strategies that'll be more thoroughly evaluated in the comprehensive plan. And ultimately, both housing needs analysis, large parts of that will go into the comprehensive plan, and large parts of the economic opportunity analysis will go into the economic chapter of the comprehensive plan. So these documents are valuable in that they also fulfill the comprehensive plan elements specifically to those items. There's also a land use chapter in the comprehensive plan, which both housing and employment fit into as well. And so all these start to form where we're going in terms of a framework of what is our need, because I think that's part of it, is, defining what it is that, what is our, and what is that need based on, where are we going kind of as a community. So that's part of that. And there'll be a visioning process as well.
So I'm just trying to get these timelines in my head here.
Yep.
So is everything getting improved in June of 2024? Does that kind of all come together?
That's actually just the housing needs analysis piece of it. And then from there would be an urban growth boundary expansion.
Okay.
That would be initiated. It would be after, what we're intending is that would be after the housing needs analysis. There is a new provision in the state law called sequential comprehensive plan adoption. Malala is doing that right now. They're the first. We will probably follow their lead on this, and that gives us a little bit more time to get the efficiency measures that I talked about, those cottage development, planned unit development, and mixed use corridor those in place because we really need to have those in place before we submit an urban growth boundary expansion. And that's all driven by the state and the Department of Land Conservation and Development. Normally, you would put all that together before you, all those 3 items would normally be part of your prior to your housing needs analysis adoption. But the sequential comprehensive plan piece that the state has provided gives a little bit more latitude. It also protects the jurisdictions in the sense that if there is an appeal, that has to occur on the housing needs analysis piece of this, so in other words, that would be adopted by itself. And then it's not, the other pieces on the efficiency measures and the urban growth boundary would be appealable separately. But normally, and a lot of cities have faced challenges with this, is the whole thing, the housing needs analysis and everything else is challenged with the urban growth boundary expansion. So it basically sets aside the record for the housing needs analysis and basically says that appeal period is over on that. And so that's actually a good thing for predictability for a jurisdiction as to where we're going. If we, desire to go in a certain direction, and let's say there's employment lands and there's housing lands, and we really want to make sure those stay in play, then if someone had an issue, they would have to appeal it at the housing needs analysis adoption and not at the urban growth boundary adoption.
Commissioner Ewert?
I may be just a little thick, but isn't the HPS a pretty critical piece of moving forward with the whole comp plan thing and everything else? And they're asking us to hold off on that. So I don't quite understand, without our strategy, how do we move forward? It doesn't,
and I think it's a great question. I think that, we obviously have that in play in the sense that we've had an advisory group that's gone through and vetted that. I mean, we'll use those strategies, even though they're not technically adopted through the comprehensive plan process. We'll use them as guidelines. They're not adopted per se, but understanding that they have to be adopted. And I think that does provide a framework. Personally, I believe that those strategies, whatever housing mix we end up with, in terms of like targeted housing mix, that I think those strategies provide for incentivizing to create more affordable options within the city. And so I think those obviously will be used regardless of whether they're adopted. I think part of the challenge is that I think when the grant was written in specific and it got split apart, they were like, there's a housing needs analysis grant and there's a housing production and strategy grant. And one of those, the housing needs piece was being directly funded through the state to a consultant. We're getting reimbursed for the housing production strategy part of that. So they did it kind of in a strange way. They're not one thing. So they put timelines on those and said you need to do certain things within certain time frames, or ask for special treatment on that. And then essentially the state is saying is, one, where you don't need to adopt those, and they basically said, which they probably should have told us at the beginning, is really you're not supposed to adopt your housing production strategy before your housing needs analysis. No one has done that. So in fact, we would be the first in the entire state to have adopted a housing production strategy. Part of what they're wanting us to look at is our mix of housing in terms of what we need based on incomes and what that relates to strategies, which I think we've already done. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of change in that, but they're really saying you can't do it out of sequence. We will not support it. It's their grant. They have to be behind this or we're going to not be successful in getting through the process. But yeah.
So, and maybe I just got it wrong here, but they said that they wanted us to push this out until February and June of 2024?
February would be likely when the Planning Commission would hear it. So we have to adopt housing needs and housing production by June 2024.
But didn't you say that the Portland State University POP numbers run out? on June?
July
in
1.
June of 24?
July 1, 2024. So we have to have everything done by June, end of June 2024. So in July 1, there'll be a new population projection.
Okay. Well,
There's a lot of moving pieces here. And so, I mean, I don't think materially, great question. I think it's just, they didn't like message this very well, to be frank. I mean, you know, at the same time, I'm appreciative of the fact that we got grants from them that paid for all this work, which is not a small amount of work. And I think it's helped because our consultants were working hand in hand with them. Had we done this on our own, it would have been a lot more challenging because it's their grant. They're vested more in this, I would say, as well. So,
and this has come down from the state of Oregon.
yes, Department of Land Conservation and Development. Yeah.
Well, then I guess that doesn't surprise me a whole lot. Okay.
And I know it's a little confusing because it's like, why are we pumping the brakes on this? And like, you know, because I was like, there's no way I'm not going to get reimbursed. We're not just me, but the city's not going to get reimbursed. I'm like driving this thing through because it had to be by the end of May. But they're saying, no, you actually don't need to have it adopted by council. It's adoption ready. And they're willing to say, yes, we'll reimburse. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And I get their logic about doing more work and more assessment. It's just, it would have been nice to know 4 months ago on this.
Now, the same people that are doing that are probably doing the tolling thing, so. I did just say that.
So more to come, and I'm going to try to so this is not like confusing at all. I mean, because I think part of it is it's really easy to lose track of where things are at and what did we discuss. You know, time flies, and you know, like a year from now, it's going to be like, so there'll be refreshers. You will be getting on this, and you will not be forgetting this because I will be making sure that we have refreshers on this. And there'll be other venues as well. I mean, there's a lot of things coming, so.
I don't envy you at all.
Commissioner DeRoche, anything to add?
No, thank you.
Very well. Items of interest, guidance from Planning Commission. I was just going to bring up the fencing thing, but we already addressed that. Also, update on Walnut. Anything new? Any new news in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, just on Walnut Street, the design plans are done. The application has been completed. There's a couple small pieces of information that need to be put into the packet. It's all in Public Works hands, but that should be submitted very, very shortly, and that process should be started. So, and we're anxious to get that going too. I mean, I think it's a big project. I mean, it's got multiple levels of why it's beneficial, and it's high priority for the city.
Very good. No other items outstanding? Going once, going twice? No. Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that the Planning Commission adjourns.
Is there a second? I read lips. Judy said.
A second, sorry.
Very well. Then I believe that we will adjourn for the evening. Thank you very much, City of Canby.